Oh, I can't believe I'm making this video. But they do say that YouTube is the platform of relatively free expression, so here I am, freely expressing my thoughts on Peppa Pig, of all things. Let's see how this goes. Hello everyone, my name's Ayla Bell, and I feel like I need to justify why me, a 28-year-old adult who works and pays taxes, watches Peppa Pig, a show for preschoolers. If you're interested in the why, then stick around. If you don't care and just want to know the juicy stuff, skip to this timestamp. But for the rest of you who do care, here's how it is. A few years ago, I was super into watching shows like Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures. I found, and still find, those shows super interesting. But as much as I liked those shows, they had a really bad effect on my psyche. I had nightmares that really messed with me. One was so realistic that I decided to stop watching those shows altogether. However, I couldn't just stop there. Because of the thought that there might be ghosts in my house that might try to interact with me in some way, I became scared of the quiet dark, even while knowing full well that ghosts can be active in both darkness and light. In any case, darkness in itself is fine, although not really, because I'm paranoid I might see an apparition, which you think you wouldn't be able to see in the dark, but again, Ghost Adventures and Ghost Hunters and stuff, apparently they do see things in the dark, and that just kind of freaks me out. And when it's too quiet, I had the paranoid thought that I'd hear disembodied voices in my room.
Aloe? Aren't these fears kind of childish?
How about you experience a lucid dream where you're in bed powerless while an invisible force pulls on your blankets while your body is paralyzed, and then you come back and ask me if it's childish? Besides, everyone has a rational fear, so leave me alone. Anyway, in response to this, I tried out different ways to have sounds going on in my room when I'm sleeping at night.
But Aloe, why don't you just listen to music?
I tried that. But here's the thing. I can't listen to music with lyrics because I'll focus on the words too much and that'll keep me awake. And I can't listen to music without lyrics because if I suddenly hear dialogue in a song that doesn't have dialogue, then my ghost senses will start tingling and I'll freak out. So, I resolved to having the TV on while I sleep. I'd simply put on a show that I didn't care about, and hearing the TV voices assured me that whatever voices I was hearing was coming from the TV and not from the ghosts. After some trial and error, I resolved to putting on the 24-hour running Nick Jr. channel since I didn't care about the preschool shows. This worked for a little while, until I started paying attention to the shows, which defeated the purpose of the endeavor, but that doesn't matter. Long story short, I eventually stumbled across Peppa Pig, and while the art style and animation isn't anything impressive, the writing in it made me laugh. I don't mean in a bad way where I'm laughing at the show. I mean the jokes they made actually landed with me and made me laugh. Plus, I appreciated the cheeky humor and writing in general. So, yeah, I like Peppa Pig. I don't ever recreationally watch it in my downtime because, let's be honest, there's a plethora of better shows, but if it's on, I know I'll at least be entertained. So for those of you who don't know, here's a short explanation of what Peppa Pig is. Peppa Pig is a British preschool cartoon created by Neville Astley and Mark Baker back in 2004. I actually didn't know it was that old. I was 11 at that time and had no idea Peppa existed until I was an adult. But anyway, the show stars a 5-year-old or so piglet named Peppa living in a world of anthropomorphic animals, and the show just revolves around her everyday life, playing, going to school and other places, and interacting with her friends, family, neighbors, and others. The show sort of has morals for viewers to learn, but they aren't in your face. Most of the time, there isn't a moral. The characters just do things and live their lives. It's kind of like real life, where there isn't always a lesson to be learned. It's also not the type of show where the characters break the fourth wall, they only interact with each other. As far as child characters go, they aren't perfect and completely well-behaved like Dora the Explorer, but they aren't 100% realistic either. Yes, the kids are cheeky and speak their minds and are a bit chaotic and stubborn like real kids, but they don't get into nearly as much trouble and they are a bit too compliant with their authority figures to be believable, but they're still fun. I also appreciate how the child characters, at least, all have a chance to have their time in the spotlight to where the audience understands their quirks and personalities, with the exception of Candy Cat. I don't know why, she never gets any love and it's weird. I mean, there's that one time with the aquarium where we learn her family likes to go there and stare at the fish because they're cats, but that's it. Some adults get some focus as well, some being more standout than others, but overall, I think it's a solid cast of characters. My favorite characters have to be Edmund Elephant, because he's the smartest character in the show, and he's only like 3 years old. Yes, even smarter than the adults. Miss Rabbit, because she's the most capable character in the show, and Madame Gazelle, because she's quirky and mysterious. Like I said earlier, the show tends to have some sassy humor that I don't think the intended audience will always pick up on, but I find immensely entertaining. At least the episodes I saw. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I've seen all 200 plus episodes of this show, but the ones I have seen, let's just say that after a while, I started to notice some suspicious things that seemed oddly out of place. On the surface, Peppa Pig is super innocent and not problematic at all, but there are bits and pieces of information that are fed to us that suggest that things aren't 100% rosy in this world. I'm gonna try to avoid making this an off-brand film theory episode, and I'm definitely not trying to create some Peppa Pig creepypasta. I'm just gonna note some peculiarities that I noticed, maybe give some reasonable-ish theories, but for the most part, I'll let you guys come up with your own conclusions. Alright, so right off the bat, there's something up with the town that Peppa lives in. It low-key gives Stanley Parable vibes. What I mean is, many of the adults in this show are really ignorant, simple, complacent, and oddly named. Let's start with the ignorance bordering on stupidity. There's an episode where the professional adults couldn't figure out how to fix problems outside of their roles, when the problems weren't really things they couldn't do. This is my least favorite episode and I skip it every time, but let me explain. There's a character named Pedro Pony and he wears glasses. One day, Pedro hurts his nose and the doctor is called to help him, which is fine, but then Pedro's glasses are covered in mud and he says he can't see. The doctor, the medical professional, says he can't help Pedro because he's not an optometrist. His glasses are just covered in mud, and the doctor didn't know how to fix that. Right. So they call the optometrist who cleans Pedro's glasses, but then there's a tortoise who is upside down on its back and is squeaking for help. Neither the optometrist nor the doctor understood how to fix this problem of flipping the tiny tortoise over. So they had to call the vet, who turned the tortoise right side up so it could walk again. In a different episode, we see Mummy Cat's job is just to draw shapes on a computer and print them out. That's it. And Daddy Rabbit's job is just to stamp papers. That's it. The adults working at the television studio in this world don't understand the technological process of how the people that are being filmed end up on the television. They simply use the instruments and gadgets without question. When the process was explained to them, the response was, "Huh, is that how that works?" Miss Rabbit is kind of an anomaly in this show. Think Nurse Joy from Pokemon, except each Nurse Joy is the exact same person. Miss Rabbit has the most jobs in the show. She has like 6 or more jobs, and is low-key one of the biggest reasons why this town is able to run at all. Literally, without her, the town is doomed. In one episode, she got injured and other adults had to fill in for her. It was a mess, and they were incapable of figuring out how to do these jobs. Since Miss Rabbit has so many jobs in one day, each of her jobs has to be put on pause while she is doing one of them, which means her customers or clients have to wait for her to finish the other things she's doing in order to go on with their day. For example, Miss Rabbit is the only cashier at the supermarket, but she's also the only taxi driver. So when she needs to drive someone to the airport, no one is at the supermarket ringing up the customer's groceries. They simply have to wait for her. It's like no one else in town is qualified to do any of these things, and that's weird. But even as capable as she is, Miss Rabbit simply does what she's told without question and doesn't 100% understand the science or logic behind what she does. When she's a taxi driver, she quote-unquote talks like a taxi driver, where she uncharacteristically talks a bunch, even to the point of not really saying much of anything. When questioned, she says she does that because that's what taxi drivers sound like. Outside of driving the taxi, she doesn't have that quirk. Even at other jobs, when she says something incorrect and is corrected, she'd say she didn't know that about her own job. The point I'm getting at here is that the adults just do what they're told and don't question the logic behind it. They're just filling their role, no matter how mind-numbing, and happily doing so, just like Stanley in the Stanley Parable. There are 2 instances in the show where an adult is unsatisfied with their lives: Mummy Sheep and Daddy Dog. But before I get into talking about them, if you're enjoying this video, then embrace your inner child and hit that like button and subscribe for more reviews, rants, and rewrites. And if you're still watching, put a pig emoji in the comments. Thank you! Anyway, Mummy Sheep really wanted to leave that town and have a completely new job, learn a new language, and be challenged. When given the opportunity to move away, she was super enthusiastic to do so and says she's been wanting to leave since forever. But interestingly enough, right as she was about to leave, the opportunity to leave was taken away from her and she was forced to stay in the town. When her daughter asked if they'd stay in that town forever, Mummy Sheep sadly replied, yes. That's kind of telling if you ask me. It's like she's being trapped or something, like she's not allowed to go beyond her role. In another case, there's Daddy Dog, who is a captain that loves to sail around the world. Presumably, he was gone from home for a long time, leaving his son and wife behind. One day, he came home and it was decided that he would stay in town and never leave again. The implication is that he didn't come to this conclusion on his own. We know this because Daddy Dog is often sad that he can't sail around the world anymore. He often says that he misses the sea. Daddy Dog even tried to leave once, saying something along the lines of, "See you guys in a few months." Danny, his son, had to remind him that he said he wouldn't go off sailing again, which stopped Daddy Dog in his tracks. Now, I don't know the full circumstances, but it seems like Daddy Dog was guilted into staying. You could make the argument that his wife and child missed him and just want him to be around more, but given the Mummy Sheep situation, there could also be a status quo that's not allowed to be broken. Who's to say? I didn't mention this before, but the show has a narrator. The narrator doesn't interact with the characters like in other shows, but he does make some interesting comments. He often says, "Everyone likes blank." For example, everyone likes jumping in muddy puddles, and everyone likes beans on toast, things like that. Even for things like soft play, which is an area the adults of the show dislike, the narrator still says, everyone likes soft play. This does sort of imply some kind of unspoken compliance and conformity of the characters within the show. Even if a character is relatively unhappy, or at the very least not happy enough to laugh, at the end of each episode, they have to laugh along with the rest of the characters. And as far as lessons go, it's not the best thing to teach that everyone has to like these things and that you have to laugh at the end of each of these situations. I mean, it's cool if you can cheer up and find humor in unfavorable situations, but it's still weird. Earlier I mentioned how the adults are oddly named. Similarly as the Stanley Parable, in which employees are really only referred by their numbers, in Peppa Pig, none of the adults have names. They are either referred to as Mummy or Daddy, followed by what animal they are, Miss or Mr, followed by what animal they are, or Doctor, followed by what animal they are. There are some other honorifics, but the point is that no adult has a unique name. Only the children have unique names. Not even married couples call each other by a unique name, or adult siblings, such as Mummy Rabbit and Miss Rabbit, call each other by their names. Heck, Mummy Pig calls her parents Grandpa and Grandma Pig while talking to them. It's like the adults only call themselves by their roles and no longer have identities. Makes you wonder what's going to happen to Peppa and her friends when they grow up. In fact, Peppa and her friends in general seem a lot more free-spirited than the adults, while at the same time you can see the programming of society beginning to influence them. For example, 98% of the child characters in the show have a first name that start with the letter of whatever animal they are. You know, Peppa Pig, Susie Sheep, Rebecca Rabbit, etc. There are a few exceptions, but they are all in Peppa's family, namely her little brother George and 2 cousins Alexander and Chloe. Everyone else sticks to the naming convention. Rebecca Rabbit was about to have new baby siblings, and she, along with her friends, were tasked with naming them. When given options by Pedro of names that didn't start with the letter R, Rebecca and her friends rejected them, saying they didn't sound right, and they ultimately agreed upon 2 R names. Edmund Elephant, my favorite character, as previously mentioned, is intellectually the smartest character in the show. At only 3 or so years old, he seems to have a high IQ and knows things that many of the adults don't seem to know. However, his intelligence is seen as annoying by some of the adults, and even the narrator, who refers to Edmund as a clever clogs, which is like calling someone a smarty pants or a smart aleck. It's almost like he knows too much and isn't allowed to. I think I've hammered the point of the oddity of this town in this regard, but wait! This society is suspicious in other ways too. Like in Zootopia, there are prey and predator citizens. Everyone in town is super nice and civil towards each other, and there is never violence, but there are multiple occasions in which some prey animals get nervous around predator animals. Grandpa Pig was suspicious of Mr. Fox of trying to eat his chickens at night. Daddy Pig has gotten nervous and suspicious of Daddy Wolf, who admittedly often says how hungry he is to Daddy Pig in a rather creepy and insistent manner. And Madame Gazelle was initially scared of Mr. Lion when she went to the zoo. She literally screamed and said, "A lion has escaped!" which not only implies that predators in this world used to eat the prey animals, but also that sentient lions are still kept behind bars in a zoo somewhere. Completely ignoring the fact that this is a society of sentient anthropomorphic animals who themselves have animal pets as well as zoos where they cage and look at non-sentient animals, it's weird that Madame Gazelle, who is relatively old and has a lot of world experience, was expecting lions, which are sentient, capable members of society in this world, to be locked up in a zoo. Not only that, but Madame Gazelle was also scared of Mrs. Crocodile for the exact same reason. Speaking of Madame Gazelle, this could have been a one-time gag, but she's apparently a vampire? Like the blood-sucking kind. It wasn't outright said, but she didn't have a reflection, as the narrator pointed out, and she said that vampires reminded her of her time back in the old country. So vampires potentially exist in this world. And so do giant sentient produce? There's a giant potato who encourages people to eat fruits and veggies. One could make the argument that he's just an animal in a potato suit, but I don't think he is. He is a giant sentient potato, and there's also a giant sentient carrot, both of whom presumably eat their own kind, given their encouragement of others to eat fruits and veggies. But oddly enough, that's not the weirdest entity of this show. Oh no! The weirdest entity is the Queen. The Queen is a human. She's the only human. Isn't that odd? There's a single human in this world full of animals, and she's the Queen. She's like a relic of what used to be, only kept alive, perhaps for tradition's sake, for appearances. Here's the extra thing. She's the Queen of England. England exists in this world, and not just England, but Italy, France, America, Australia. Pretty much every real-world location exists in this world. So, what happened to this world? Clearly humans used to be a thing. The kids in the show even sing human nursery rhymes such as Mary Had a Little Lamb and Little Bo Peep, both about humans and their pet sheep. Sheep, mind you, which are now anthropomorphic sentient beings. Humans initially established these societies, but something happened to them. This is giving super Adventure Time vibes, and no, I'm not going to review Adventure Time, I don't feel like it, but I think a case can be made that Peppa Pig takes place in the same universe as Adventure Time. That's the biggest out there theory I'll give. It's most likely not true, in fact I'm sure it's not, but it's plausible. Humans used to exist. Some huge cataclysmic event happened that wiped most of them out, but similarly to Finn, the Queen of England was left while the animals in the wild mutated to gain sentience and humanity. Peppa just happens to live in a town/society that emphasizes friendly conformity and slight cult-like characteristics without actually being a cult. All of this is simply the only conclusion I can come up with, and I know it's all wild and far-fetched, but so is this show. Under its surface, I mean. At the end of the day, Peppa Pig is just an innocent preschool show with some cheeky and clever writing at times. I don't think that the writers intended to make the society come off the way that it does. I mean, to some degree, I think they did sort of intend some of these implications because of some repeat offenses and how some of the writing is handled. But no, I don't think there was actually some apocalyptic event that made the society what it is. I both think I'm looking at it too seriously and just seriously enough. Either way, it's all in good fun and it's all a good time. So yeah, I like Peppa Pig. This went on for way longer than I thought it would. So, Peppa Pig, what do you guys think about it? Do you think it's a good kid show? Are you annoyed by it? Did I say anything surprising? If you don't feel like talking about Peppa, what is your favorite preschool show? Either one you think is cool now, or your favorite when you were a kid. My favorite show as a child was Barney and Friends. In any case, comment below and let's get this conversation started. And remember, I'm the Artistic Ailabelle, and if you enjoyed this video, make sure to like it and subscribe for more reviews, rants, and rewrites. But as for now, that's all there is. There isn't any more.